The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Silver Creek, Texas, in 1875, but it wasn't outlaws causing trouble this time. It was Rosalie Evans firing warning shots at the stubborn cowboy who'd been leaving yellow primroses on her doorstep every morning for the past 3 weeks. "I told you to stay away from my property, Mr. Armstrong!" Rosalie shouted, her auburn hair whipping in the warm spring breeze as she stood on her porch, rifle pointed skyward. Adam Armstrong tipped his worn leather hat and offered that infuriating smile that made her both furious, and though she'd never admit it, slightly weak in the knees. "Just bringing some color to your homestead, Miss Evans. Seems like you could use it." Rosalie's grip tightened on her rifle. At 26, she'd spent the last 4 years building this small ranch alone after her father's passing. The last thing she needed was some handsome cowboy thinking she required saving or courting. "The next flowers you bring will be met with bullets, not air," she warned, her green eyes narrowed. "And they won't be aimed at the sky." Adam shrugged, unperturbed. "Then I reckon I'll have to find hardier blooms tomorrow." He mounted his chestnut stallion with easy grace. "Good day, Miss Evans." As he rode away, Rosalie glanced down at the yellow primroses. Despite herself, she bent to pick them up, their sweet scent filling her nostrils. They were beautiful, just like the ones her mother used to grow before the fever took her. With a frustrated sigh, she brought them inside. This was the 12th bouquet she'd reluctantly added to her collection. Inside her modest but well-kept cabin, Rosalie placed the primroses in a jar with the others. The house was spotless, practical, with simple furnishings her father had built. The only frivolous items were her books, novels, and poetry she'd ordered from back east, and now, these unwanted flowers. Rosalie had worked herself to exhaustion building this place from nearly nothing. After her parents died, leaving her with debts and little else, she'd sold everything except this small plot of land and some livestock. Through determination and countless sleepless nights, she'd created a modest but self-sufficient cattle operation. She didn't need Adam Armstrong or his flowers disrupting her carefully constructed life. The following morning, Rosalie woke before dawn as usual. She dressed quickly in her practical work clothes, a simple blouse and sturdy skirt that allowed her to move freely while working. After a simple breakfast, she stepped onto her porch, rifle ready. There were no flowers. Rosalie felt an unexpected twinge of disappointment, quickly replaced by satisfaction. Her threat had worked. She set about her morning chores, checking on her small herd of cattle, mending a broken fence post, and taking inventory of her supplies. It wasn't until midday, as she returned from the creek with water, that she noticed them, a ring of purple and white wildflowers planted directly in the soil beside her front steps, already taking root. "That insufferable man!" she muttered, but couldn't bring herself to tear them out. It would be wasteful, and waste was something Rosalie Evans could not abide. When the sound of approaching hoofbeats reached her ears later that afternoon, she was ready. She stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, as Adam rode up to her property line, keeping a respectful distance this time. "You said not to bring flowers to your door," he called out, a mischievous glint in his blue eyes. "You didn't say anything about planting them. Mr. Armstrong, have you nothing better to do than harass a woman trying to run her ranch in peace?" Rosalie demanded. Adam removed his hat, revealing thick sandy brown hair. "As a matter of fact, I've plenty to do. I just finished mending 2 miles of fence line for the Wilsons, and I'm headed to help old man Jenkins with his barn roof before sundown." Rosalie frowned. Adam Armstrong had arrived in Silver Creek 6 months ago and quickly earned a reputation as a skilled ranch hand who never turned down work. He was also known for his easy charm and good looks, a combination that had every unmarried woman in town batting her eyelashes at him. All except Rosalie, who found his persistent attention baffling. "Then why waste time here?" she asked bluntly. "Never considered bringing a smile to a pretty lady's face a waste of time," he replied. Before she could retort, he continued, "Those purple ones are called prairie verbena. The white ones are evening primrose. They'll bloom beautifully in the evenings." Despite herself, Rosalie glanced at the carefully arranged flowers. I didn't ask for your botany lesson. No, madam, you didn't. Adam settled his hat back on his head. But sometimes the things we don't ask for turn out to be exactly what we need. With that puzzling statement, he tipped his hat and rode away, leaving Rosalie staring after him, rifle forgotten in her hands. That evening, as promised, the white flowers opened, their delicate petals catching the golden light of sunset. Rosalie sat on her porch step, a rare moment of rest, and found herself wondering about Adam Armstrong. She'd rebuffed his attention repeatedly, yet he persisted with a patience that confused her. Most men in Silver Creek either saw her as a curiosity, a woman running a ranch alone, or as a challenge to be conquered. Those who did express interest were typically after her land or looking for someone to cook and clean for them. Adam seemed different, though Rosalie wasn't naive enough to trust appearances. The next morning, she rose even earlier than usual, determined to catch him in the act. She positioned herself by her window before the first hint of dawn broke the horizon. Sure enough, as the sky turned from black to deep blue, a figure on horseback approached. Adam dismounted quietly, careful not to disturb the morning silence. In the dim pre-dawn light, Rosalie watched as he knelt beside her porch steps with what appeared to be several small plants. With practiced movements, he dug small holes and gently placed each plant, patting the soil around them with care. There was something in his focused expression, visible even in the dim light, that gave Rosalie pause. This wasn't the act of a man looking to impress or make a show. He worked with quiet purpose, his movements gentle yet sure. Before he finished, Rosalie stepped outside, startling him. Most men bring candy or trinkets when courting a woman, she said, crossing her arms. Not dirt and plants. Adam looked up, seemingly unsurprised at being caught. Most men don't pay attention. He continued his work, placing the last plant. You have calluses on your hands from working this land. You value things that last, things that grow. Candy melts. Trinkets gather dust. But these, he gestured to the flowers. These will come back year after year if tended properly. Rosalie was momentarily speechless. It was perhaps the most thoughtful observation any man had made about her. I still don't recall asking to be courted, she finally managed, though her voice lacked its usual edge. Adam stood, brushing soil from his hands. No, you didn't. And if you truly want me to stop, I will. His eyes met hers, surprisingly serious. Just say the word, Miss Evans. For the first time, Rosalie hesitated. The sincerity in his expression caught her off guard. Why me? She asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. Half the women in town would happily accept your attention. Adam's expression softened. Because those women see the hat and the smile, not the man. You've never once tried to impress me, never changed who you are. In a world of people playing parts, you're refreshingly real. The morning light was growing stronger now, illuminating his features, the strong jaw, the slight crinkles at the corners of his eyes, the earnestness in his expression. I need to start my chores, Rosalie said abruptly, uncomfortable with the direction of her thoughts. Adam nodded, respecting her retreat. These are coneflowers, he explained, gesturing to his latest addition. Purple and sturdy. They'll stand tall through summer heat and attract butterflies. He mounted his horse. Good day, Miss Evans. As he rode away, Rosalie studied the new additions to her growing garden. Despite her best efforts to remain unmoved, she found herself wondering what flowers tomorrow might bring. Over the next week, Adam continued his early morning visits, each time adding different flowers to the expanding garden. Black-eyed Susans, liatris, Mexican hat flowers, all native plants that required little water but offered abundant color. Each morning, Rosalie watched from her window, telling herself it was merely to keep an eye on her property, not because she'd grown curious about his selections. On the 8th day, she finally gave in to her curiosity, and stepped outside while he worked. Do you plan to turn my entire property into a flower garden, Mr. Armstrong? She asked, coming to stand beside him as he planted what looked like small bushes. These are sage, he replied, seeming pleased by her interest. Practical as well as pretty. Good for cooking and medicine. He glanced up at her with a smile. And I'd be honored if you'd call me Adam. Rosalie considered his request. Very well. Adam. The name felt strange on her tongue, an unexpected intimacy. I suppose if you're going to keep digging up my yard, we might as well be on a first-name basis. His smile widened. Does that mean I have permission to continue? I didn't say that, she replied quickly. I'm merely acknowledging the reality of your stubborn persistence. Adam laughed, a warm sound that did strange things to Rosalie's composure. Fair enough. And what should I call you? Miss Evans is perfectly adequate. Is it your preference? Or just what you're used to? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her preference about anything in so long. Rosalie, she said finally. My name is Rosalie. Rosalie, he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. It suits you. They fell into a companionable silence as Adam continued his work. Rosalie found herself studying his hands, strong and capable, with calluses that spoke of hard work. His fingers moved with surprising gentleness as they settled each plant into the soil. Where did you learn about flowers? She asked. Most cowboys I've known couldn't tell a daisy from a dandelion. Adam's expression turned reflective. My mother. She kept gardens wherever we lived, which was many places. My father was a restless man, always chasing the next opportunity. But Mother, she'd make a home wherever we landed. Said flowers were her way of putting down roots, even temporarily. And where is she now? Rosalie asked. Gone. 5 years past. Influenza. His hand stilled momentarily. Father followed a year later. Some said from grief, though the doctor called it heart failure. I'm sorry, Rosalie said quietly, knowing the inadequacy of the words. My parents are gone too. Father 4 years ago, Mother 2 years before that. Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. It's a strange thing, isn't it? Becoming an orphan as an adult. Yes, Rosalie agreed, surprised by his insight. Everyone expects you to carry on because you're grown, yet the ground beneath your feet has vanished all the same. Their eyes met, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. For the first time, Rosalie saw Adam not as an intrusion on her carefully ordered life, but as someone who might truly understand parts of her experience. The moment was broken by the distant sound of the town church bell chiming 6 o'clock. I should go, Adam said, rising to his feet. Promised the Millers I'd help with their barn raising today. Rosalie nodded, suddenly conscious of standing in her yard conversing with a man while still in her nightdress and robe. What would people think? Then again, when had she ever cared what people thought? Thank you, she said, gesturing to the newly planted sage. It's practical. Adam's smile returned. Just like you. Practical, but with unexpected beauty for those who take the time to notice. Before she could respond to that unsettling compliment, he tipped his hat and was gone, leaving Rosalie wondering if perhaps she'd been too quick to dismiss his attention. 2 days later, Rosalie rode into Silver Creek for supplies. The small town consisted of a main street with essential businesses: general store, blacksmith, saloon, church, and schoolhouse, with scattered homes and shops branching off like tributaries from a river. It was a Friday, which meant the town was busier than usual, with ranchers and farmers coming in for supplies. Inside Thompson's general store, Rosalie methodically collected her necessities: flour, coffee, sugar, ammunition, and a new file for sharpening her tools. As she examined a bolt of sturdy cotton fabric, considering whether she could justify the expense for new curtains, she became aware of whispers. 4th time this week he's been seen riding toward her place. Scandalous. A single woman entertaining. Should know better, after everything her poor father did to. Rosalie stiffened but kept her expression neutral. Town gossip was nothing new. When her father died, leaving substantial debts, there had been whispers then too about how she should sell the ranch, how a woman couldn't possibly manage alone, how she was too stubborn for her own good. "Morning, Miss Evans," came the cheerful voice of Martha Thompson, the store owner's wife. "Finding everything you need today?" "Yes, thank you," Rosalie replied, placing the fabric back on the shelf. The curtains could wait. "I was just telling Mrs. Baker what beautiful flowers are blooming at your place," Martha continued, eyes twinkling with barely contained curiosity. "Never took you for a gardener." Rosalie met the woman's gaze steadily. "I'm experimenting with new interests, Mrs. Thompson." "How wonderful," Martha replied. "And does this new interest happen to include our town's most eligible bachelor? I hear Mr. Armstrong has quite the knowledge of botany." Rosalie felt heat rise to her cheeks but kept her composure. "Mr. Armstrong has kindly shared his expertise. Nothing more." "Of course, dear," Martha said, not bothering to hide her smile. "Though I must say, it's refreshing to see you taking an interest in something beyond that ranch. Your mother always worried you'd work yourself into an early grave." The mention of her mother stung. Martha had been one of Rebecca Evans' closest friends, and Rosalie knew the older woman meant well, but the implied criticism was clear. "My mother understood the value of independence," Rosalie replied. "Now, if you'll total my purchases, I'd like to be home before midday." As Martha tallied the items, Rosalie heard the store's bell jingle, announcing a new customer. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. The sudden hush of whispers told her enough. "Miss Evans," Adam greeted, removing his hat as he approached. "What a pleasant surprise." Rosalie nodded in acknowledgement, acutely aware of the interested gazes following their interaction. "Mr. Armstrong, I was hoping to run into you," he continued, seemingly oblivious to the attention they were drawing. "Jenkins' mare foaled last night, a beautiful Palomino filly. Made me think of that broken fence post by your north pasture. If it hasn't been mended, I'd be happy to help this afternoon." Rosalie blinked, momentarily confused. She hadn't mentioned any broken fence to him. "That's considerate of you, but unnecessary. I fixed it yesterday." Adam's eyes held hers meaningfully. "Are you certain? I could have sworn I noticed it when riding past your property line." Understanding dawned. He was offering a legitimate reason for his presence at her ranch, a counter to the gossip that was clearly circulating. "Actually," she said slowly, "now that you mention it, there is another section that needs attention. The west boundary near the creek." "Happy to help," Adam replied, a hint of relief in his smile. "Say 2 o'clock?" "That would be fine," Rosalie agreed, ignoring Martha Thompson's poorly disguised delight at this exchange. After paying for her supplies, Rosalie left the store, Adam following a respectful distance behind. Once outside, she turned to face him. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for that explanation." Adam shrugged. "Small towns run on two things, gossip and good intentions. Sometimes it helps to feed the latter to starve the former." Rosalie studied him with new appreciation. "You're more perceptive than you let on. And you're more concerned with appearances than you pretend to be," he countered gently. She started to deny it, then stopped herself. "Not for my sake," she clarified. "But my parents were respected in this town. I won't have their memory tarnished by implications." Adam nodded, understanding in his expression. 2 o'clock, then? I really will fix that fence if you'd like." Rosalie hesitated, then made a decision. "Yes. And perhaps you might stay for supper afterward, as proper compensation for your labor." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after a long night. "I'd be honored." As Rosalie mounted her horse, supplies secured in her saddlebags, she wondered if she just made a terrible mistake or taken the first step towards something unexpectedly wonderful. At precisely 2 o'clock, Adam arrived at Rosalie's ranch, tools strapped to his saddle. True to his word, he set to work on the western fence line, efficiently replacing broken posts and tightening wire. Rosalie worked alongside him, passing tools and holding posts steady as he drove them into the ground. They worked well together, she realized with surprise. Adam didn't try to take over or suggest she leave the Man's work, to him, as others might have. Instead, he adapted to her rhythm, offering suggestions rather than commands, respecting her knowledge of her own land. You handle tools like someone born to it, Adam observed as Rosalie efficiently twisted wire with a pair of pliers. Necessity is an effective teacher, she replied. After father died, I had two choices: learn or lose everything. Adam hammered a staple into a post, securing the wire. Most women would have sold. Most women weren't raised by James Evans, Rosalie said, a hint of pride in her voice. He taught me that land is the only thing worth having, because they're not making any more of it. Wise man, Adam agreed. My father believed the opposite, that a man's worth was in what he could carry on his back. We never owned more than could fit in a wagon. Rosalie tried to imagine such a transient existence. That must have been difficult. At times, Adam admitted. But it taught me to value experiences over possessions. To find home in people rather than places. He glanced at her. Still, I understand the appeal of roots. Of building something lasting. They continued working as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the land. By the time they finished, the fence was sturdy enough to withstand the coming summer storms. Thank you, Rosalie said as they gathered their tools. It would have taken me twice as long alone. Happy to help, Adam replied. Though I admit I had ulterior motives. Rosalie raised an eyebrow. Oh? I was promised supper, he said with a grin. And I've heard rumors about your cooking. All lies, I assure you, Rosalie replied dryly. I'm a rancher, not a chef. Then we'll discover the truth together. Back at the cabin, Rosalie washed up and changed into a clean blouse while Adam tended to the horses. When he returned, she had a simple but hearty meal underway: beef stew with vegetables from her small kitchen garden, cornbread baking in the cast-iron skillet, and coffee brewing on the stove. Adam leaned against the doorframe, watching her move efficiently around the small kitchen. Need any help? You can set the table, she offered, nodding toward the cupboard. Plates are there. As they worked in companionable silence, Rosalie found herself acutely aware of his presence in her home. It had been years since she'd entertained anyone here. The cabin suddenly seemed smaller, more intimate, with his tall frame occupying space in her kitchen. This smells delicious, Adam said as they finally sat down to eat. Those rumors were clearly understated. Rosalie felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. It's nothing fancy. The best meals rarely are. They ate, conversation flowing more easily than Rosalie had expected. Adam told stories of his travels: cattle drives in Montana, mining towns in Colorado, fishing villages on the California coast. Rosalie shared memories of growing up in Silver Creek, of her father teaching her to ride, and her mother's dreams of one day visiting New York City. She never made it, Rosalie said softly. Always said there'd be time later, after I was grown. What about you? Adam asked. Do you share her desire to see the world beyond Texas? Rosalie considered the question. I used to. As a girl, I'd read books about far-off places and imagined visiting them. But now the ranch is everything. Adam finished for her. It has to be, she replied. I've put everything into making it work. Adam studied her across the table. It doesn't have to be either or, you know. Having roots doesn't mean you can't occasionally spread your wings. The idea was both enticing and terrifying. Perhaps. Someday. As twilight deepened into evening, they moved to the porch. The air was cool, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The flowers Adam had planted seemed to glow in the fading light, their colors muted but present. They're beautiful, Rosalie admitted, gesturing to the garden. I never thought I'd say this, but thank you for your persistence. Adam smiled. Does this mean you've forgiven my trespassing? Let's call it a provisional pardon, she replied, returning his smile. Dependent on continued good behavior. And what constitutes good behavior in your estimation, Miss Evans? Rosalie turned to face him fully. Honesty, for one. Why are you really here, Adam? In Silver Creek, I mean. A man with your skills and experience could find work anywhere. Adam's expression grew serious. Truth? Always. He looked out at the darkening landscape. I was drifting after my parents died. Moving from job to job, place to place, like my father taught me. But it started feeling hollow. He paused. 6 months ago, I was working a cattle drive that passed near here. Stopped in Silver Creek for supplies. There was something about this place, the land, the people. For the first time in years, I felt like I might want to stay somewhere. And have you found what you were looking for? Rosalie asked softly. Adam's eyes met hers. I'm beginning to think so. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Rosalie felt a pull toward him that both excited and frightened her. It's getting late, she said, breaking the moment. You should probably head back to town. Adam nodded, accepting her retreat. Thank you for supper. And the company. Thank you for the fence. And the flowers. As he mounted his horse, Adam looked back at her. Would it be presumptuous to ask if I might call on you properly? Sunday, perhaps? Rosalie hesitated only briefly. I suppose that would be acceptable. The smile that lit his face was worth the risk of saying yes. Until Sunday, then. As she watched him ride away, Rosalie realized with a start that for the first time in years, she was looking forward to something beyond the next day's work. Sunday arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. Rosalie dressed with more care than usual, selecting a blue dress she rarely wore, its color bringing out the auburn highlights in her hair. She told herself it was simply respect for the Sabbath, not anticipation of Adam's visit. After church services, where she endured knowing looks from several townspeople who had noticed Adam sitting unusually close to her, they rode back to her ranch. Adam had brought a picnic basket, prepared by the hotel's cook. I thought we might enjoy the afternoon outdoors, he suggested. Unless you'd prefer to stay in. Outside is fine. Rosalie agreed, surprised by his thoughtfulness. There's a nice spot by the creek. They settled beneath a large oak tree, spreading a blanket on the soft grass. The creek gurgled nearby, providing a soothing backdrop to their conversation. Adam unpacked the basket, revealing fried chicken, potato salad, fresh bread, and apple pie. This is quite elaborate for a Sunday picnic, Rosalie observed. Special occasions deserve special effort, Adam replied, handing her a plate. As they ate, Rosalie found herself relaxing in his company. Adam was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions. Unlike many men she'd met, he didn't dismiss her ideas or try to impress her with false bravado. Can I ask you something? She said as they finished the meal. Something personal? Of course. Have you ever been married? Or close to it? Adam shook his head. No. My lifestyle didn't exactly lend itself to lasting attachments. He looked at her curiously. What about you? Surely you've had suitors. Rosalie smiled wryly. A few. Most lost interest when they realized I was serious about running the ranch myself. She plucked a blade of grass, twirling it between her fingers. There was one Robert Harper. We were close for a time. Before my father died. What happened? Adam asked gently. Father's debts happened. Robert's family didn't approve of him marrying a woman with nothing but mortgaged land to her name. Rosalie's voice remained steady, though the memory still stung. He chose their approval over me. His loss, Adam said simply. And a profound one at that. The sincerity in his voice warmed something inside her. It was for the best. He wanted a wife who would focus on hearth and home, not cattle and crops. And what do you want, Rosalie? Adam asked, his gaze intent. Beyond making the ranch successful? The question caught her off guard. For so long, her only goal had been survival, keeping the ranch, honoring her father's legacy. The idea of wanting something for herself seemed almost foreign. I don't know, she admitted. I've been so focused on not losing everything that I haven't thought much beyond that. Adam nodded, understanding in his expression. Perhaps that's something worth considering. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the play of sunlight through the oak leaves. Without quite meaning to, Rosalie found herself relaxing against the tree trunk, her shoulder nearly touching Adam's. "Tell me about your favorite place," she said. "Of all the places you've been." Adam thought for a moment. "There's a valley in Colorado, high in the mountains. In spring, it's covered with wildflowers, blue, purple, yellow, as far as you can see. The air smells like honey and pine. The first time I saw it, I thought it must be what heaven looks like." His description was so vivid that Rosalie could almost see it. "It sounds beautiful." "It is," he agreed. "I'd like to show it to you someday." The implication that there might be a someday for them hung in the air between them. Instead of retreating as she might have before, Rosalie allowed herself to consider the possibility. "I'd like that," she said softly. Adam's hand found hers on the blanket, his fingers gently covering hers. The touch was simple but profound, a connection that sent warmth spreading through her. "Rosalie," he said, his voice low. "I know you value directness, so I'll be direct. I'm falling in love with you. I think I started falling the first time you threatened to shoot me for bringing you flowers." A startled laugh escaped her. "That's hardly the romantic beginning most women dream of." "But it's perfectly us, isn't it?" His eyes held hers, serious despite his smile. "I don't expect you to return the feeling. Not yet. But I wanted you to know where I stand." Rosalie's heart hammered in her chest. Part of her wanted to pull away, to retreat behind the walls she'd built so carefully. But another part, a part that had been silent for too long, urged her forward. "I don't know what I feel," she admitted. "Except that when you're around, things seem brighter somehow. And that terrifies me." Adam's fingers tightened gently around hers. "Fear means you have something to lose." Sometimes that's not such a bad thing. The tension between them built, a tangible force drawing them closer. When Adam leaned forward, Rosalie didn't pull away. His lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle yet sure, a promise rather than a demand. It was brief, but when they parted, Rosalie knew something fundamental had shifted. The carefully ordered life she'd constructed was changing, and for once, she didn't feel the need to resist. "I should probably take you home," Adam said, his voice slightly rough. Rosalie nodded, suddenly aware of the lateness of the hour. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the landscape in golden hues. As they packed up the picnic and rode back to her cabin, Rosalie felt a curious lightness. For the first time in years, tomorrow seemed full of possibilities rather than just responsibilities. At her door, Adam kissed her again, a gentle goodnight that left her longing for more. "May I come tomorrow? To add to your garden?" Rosalie smiled. "I suppose the west side of the house could use some color." His answering smile was like sunrise. "Until tomorrow, then." As spring deepened into summer, Adam's daily visits became a cherished ritual. Each morning, he would arrive as dawn broke, adding to the garden that now surrounded Rosalie's cabin in a riot of color. Some days he stayed only long enough to plant and water. Other days, when his work allowed, he would join her for breakfast or help with ranch chores. The garden flourished under his care. Coreopsis, yarrow, salvia, and dozens of other varieties created a tapestry of color and texture. He designed it thoughtfully, selecting plants that would bloom in succession, ensuring there would always be flowers from early spring through late fall. "It's becoming quite beautiful," Rosalie admitted one morning in late June as they surveyed the garden's progress. "Though I'm beginning to wonder where you find all these plants." Adam smiled. "I have my sources. Mrs. Jenkins has quite the collection in her greenhouse. And I've been propagating some myself, at the boarding house." The thought of Adam carefully tending seedlings in his spare time touched Rosalie deeply. "You've gone to a lot of trouble." "It's no trouble when it's for someone you care about," he replied simply. Their relationship had progressed with the same careful attention he gave the garden. Kisses stolen in the early morning light, long conversations on her porch in the evenings, Sunday picnics that became a tradition, each moment building on the last, creating something neither had expected but both had come to treasure. Silver Creek had noticed, of course. The gossip had evolved from scandalized whispers to knowing smiles. Rosalie found she minded less than she would have imagined. Adam's steady presence in her life had softened some of her defensive edges, making room for joy alongside her determination. On a particularly hot July afternoon, as they worked together to move a small herd to fresh pasture, disaster struck. A sudden thunderstorm spooked the cattle, sending them stampeding toward a ravine. Adam and Rosalie raced to head them off, their horses straining beneath them. In the chaos, Adam's horse stepped in a prairie dog hole, sending both animal and rider tumbling to the ground. Rosalie watched in horror as he fell directly in the path of the oncoming cattle. Without thinking, she drove her horse between Adam and the stampede, firing her rifle into the air. The shots, combined with her horse's presence, diverted most of the herd. By the time she reached Adam, he was trying to stand, his face twisted in pain. "Don't move," she ordered, dismounting quickly. "Where are you hurt?" "Left leg," he gasped. "Think it might be broken." Rosalie's heart pounded with fear, but her hands remained steady as she assessed the damage. His leg was indeed broken, the bone visibly misaligned beneath his torn trousers. "I need to get you to town," she said, already calculating the best way to transport him. "The cattle." "Hang the cattle," Rosalie interrupted fiercely. "They can find their own way home." Using branches and strips torn from her petticoat, she fashioned a crude splint for his leg. Getting him onto her horse was an excruciating process that left them both sweating and Adam pale with pain. "Hold on to me," she instructed, mounting behind him. "And try not to move that leg." The ride to town was slow and agonizing. Adam leaned against her, occasionally losing consciousness from the pain. Rosalie kept one arm firmly around his waist, murmuring encouragement, her heart racing with fear she refused to show. By the time they reached Dr. Patterson's office, Adam was barely conscious, his skin clammy with shock. The next hours passed in a blur as the doctor set the bone, with Rosalie refusing to leave Adam's side despite the doctor's protests that it wasn't proper. "Propriety be damned," she had snapped. "I'm staying." When Adam finally regained full consciousness, cleaned up and his leg properly set and bandaged, Rosalie was sitting beside his bed, her face etched with worry. "There you are," she said softly as his eyes focused on her. "You gave me quite a scare." Adam's hand found hers. "I'm sorry about the cattle." A startled laugh escaped her. "That's what you're worried about." "The cattle?" "Your livelihood can be rebuilt," she finished firmly. "You can't." The realization struck her with the force of lightning. In those terrifying moments when she thought she might lose him, Rosalie had understood with perfect clarity what truly mattered to her. It wasn't the ranch or her independence, or her parents' legacy, it was this man who had planted flowers at her door until she finally allowed herself to see him. "I love you," she said, the words emerging with surprising ease. "I should have told you before now." Adam's eyes widened, then softened with emotion. "Say it again." "I love you, Adam Armstrong." Rosalie leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "And if you ever scare me like that again, I will shoot you myself." His laugh turned into a groan of pain. "Noted. Dr. Patterson informed them that Adam would need several weeks of rest before he could put weight on the leg, and months before it would fully heal. The prospect of Adam recuperating at the boarding house, with minimal care and 3 flights of stairs to navigate, was concerning. "He can stay with me," Rosalie announced, ignoring the doctor's raised eyebrows. "I have a spare room, and my place is all on one level. Miss Evans, while I appreciate your practical thinking, you must consider your reputation." "My reputation is my own concern," she interrupted. "And I'd rather have the town gossips questioning my virtue than know I left him to fend for himself when I have the means to help." Adam watched this exchange with a mixture of admiration and concern. Rosalie, the doctor has a point. I don't want to cause you trouble. She fixed him with a determined look. The trouble would be worrying about you when you're not where I can see you. Besides, she added with a hint of a smile, someone needs to water those flowers. In the end, Propriety was partially satisfied by having Martha Thompson stay at the ranch as a chaperone for the first week. By the time she left, declaring that Rosalie was perfectly capable of nursing Mr. Armstrong without compromising herself, the town had largely accepted the arrangement. Adam proved to be a surprisingly good patient, though his frustration at being confined grew as the weeks passed. Rosalie adjusted her routine, doing the necessary ranch work in the early mornings and evenings, spending the hottest part of the day inside with Adam. They talked for hours about books she read aloud to him, about his travels, about her dreams for the ranch. They played cards and checkers. He taught her to whittle, laughing at her first clumsy attempts. She brought him reports of the garden's progress, sometimes cutting flowers to place beside his bed. In the quiet moments, watching him sleep or seeing the concentration on his face as he worked on a carving, Rosalie realized how completely he had transformed her life. The walls she'd built around herself after her parents' deaths had crumbled, not in a dramatic collapse but in small, daily surrenders to the possibility of happiness. One evening in late August, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Adam turned to her with unusual seriousness. "I've been thinking," he began, setting aside the crutches he now used to move around. "These past weeks being here with you. It's been the happiest time of my life, despite this." He gestured to his splinted leg. Rosalie felt a flutter of anticipation in her chest. "Mine too. When I'm healed," he continued, "I'll need to find more permanent work. Jenkins has offered me a position managing his south property." "That's wonderful," Rosalie said, though a small part of her had grown accustomed to having him always near. "It is," Adam agreed. "But it got me thinking about the future. About what I want." He took her hand, his expression earnest. "What we might want together." Rosalie's breath caught. "Adam, I love you, Rosalie Evans. More than I thought it was possible to love another person." His fingers tightened around hers. "I don't have much to offer except these hands and a promise to spend every day making you as happy as you've made me. Are you proposing?" Rosalie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam smiled. "I'd get down on one knee if I could." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small, carved wooden ring. "I made this while you were out with the cattle yesterday. It's temporary, until I can afford a proper one, but yes," Rosalie interrupted, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." The wooden ring fit perfectly as he slipped it onto her finger. "I promise I'll replace it with gold as soon as I can." Rosalie shook her head, staring at the simple band with its intricately carved flower pattern. "Don't you dare." "This is perfect." Their kiss sealed the promise, sweet and certain, full of shared dreams and possibilities neither had imagined before flowers began appearing at Rosalie's door. The wedding took place in October, when the garden Adam had planted was in its autumn glory, asters, chrysanthemums, and goldenrod creating a backdrop of purple, bronze, and gold. They exchanged vows beneath an arch Adam had built and covered with climbing roses, their fragrance mingling with the crisp fall air. Rosalie wore her mother's dress, altered and updated by Martha Thompson, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. Adam stood straight and tall, his leg healed enough that he needed only a cane, which he insisted was merely decorative, for the occasion. Silver Creek turned out in full force to witness the union of the stubborn rancher woman and the persistent cowboy who had won her heart with flowers. Even Robert Harper and his wife attended, offering sincere congratulations that Rosalie accepted with genuine goodwill, recognizing that his rejection had ultimately led her to a far greater happiness. After the ceremony, as guests enjoyed the wedding feast spread across tables in the yard, Adam led Rosalie to a quiet corner of the garden. "I have something for you," he said, presenting her with a small wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a gold wedding band engraved with a delicate pattern of primroses, the first flowers he had brought to her door. "Adam," she breathed, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "It's beautiful. To go alongside the wooden one," he explained, slipping it onto her finger next to the carved ring she had refused to replace. "Because sometimes the most precious things come from unexpected beginnings." Rosalie looked around at the home they now shared, the garden bursting with color, the cabin freshly painted, the ranch thriving under their combined efforts. In the months since Adam's injury, they had worked together to expand her small cattle operation, combining her knowledge of the land with his experience and connections. The Jenkins position had turned into a partnership that allowed Adam to divide his time between both properties. "When you first started leaving those flowers," Rosalie said, "did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Adam smiled, pulling her close. "I hoped. Though I admit there were moments when I thought you might actually shoot me. I considered it," she admitted with a laugh. "Several times." "I'm glad you exercised restraint." "So am I," Rosalie said softly, leaning into his embrace. "So am I." That night, after the guests had departed and they were finally alone as husband and wife, Rosalie and Adam stood on the porch of their home, looking out at the land that had brought them together. The garden glowed in the moonlight, a testament to patience, perseverance, and the transformative power of love. "What are you thinking?" Adam asked, his arms wrapped around her from behind. Rosalie leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. "That sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't plan for. The ones that take root when we least expect them." Adam's lips brushed her temple. "Like flowers by a door." "Exactly like that," Rosalie agreed, turning in his arms to kiss him properly. As stars appeared in the vast Texas sky, they moved inside, closing the door on a garden that would continue to bloom, season after season, year after year, a living reminder of how a cowboy's persistence and a woman's courage had created something beautiful and lasting in the wild heart of the West. 5 years later, Rosalie stood on the porch of the expanded ranch house, watching as Adam led their 3-year-old daughter Sarah around the garden, patiently explaining the name of each flower. The little girl, with her father's sandy hair and her mother's determined green eyes, listened with rapt attention, occasionally reaching out to touch a petal with careful fingers. "This one's called Black-Eyed Susan," Adam was saying, pointing to a bright yellow flower. "And these purple ones are asters." "Pretty," Sarah declared before spotting a butterfly and darting after it with a squeal of delight. Rosalie smiled, her hand resting on her swollen belly where their second child grew. In the years since their marriage, the Evans Armstrong ranch had prospered beyond her most optimistic expectations. They had expanded the cattle operation, added horses, and even experimented with new crops. The garden had grown too, now encircling the entire house and extending to a small greenhouse Adam had built for starting seedlings and protecting more delicate plants through the Texas winters. Silver Creek had grown as well. The railroad had finally reached them the previous year, bringing new opportunities and connecting them more directly to distant markets. Adam's business acumen, combined with Rosalie's practical knowledge of ranching, had positioned them well to take advantage of these changes. But more important than their material success was the life they had built together, a partnership based on mutual respect, shared goals, and a love that had only deepened with time. "Mama, look!" Sarah called, running toward her with cupped hands. "Daddy helped me catch a butterfly." Rosalie crouched down, ignoring the protest of her back, to peer at the creature gently cradled in her daughter's small hands. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. What color is it?" "Blue," Sarah answered proudly. "Like the sky." "That's right." Rosalie smoothed back a wayward curl from her daughter's forehead. "Remember what Daddy taught you about butterflies?" Sarah's face scrunched in concentration. "They need to fly free." "That's right. So what should we do with this one?" The little girl carefully opened her hands, watching with wonder as the butterfly hesitated, then fluttered away. "Goodbye, butterfly," she called after it. Adam joined them on the porch, his smile tender as he looked at his family. Teaching our daughter to let things go already? She's only 3. Never too early to learn important lessons, Rosalie replied, accepting his help to stand. Besides, she has your gentle heart. She understands. Adam's hand moved to rest beside hers on her rounded belly. And your strength. A powerful combination. The baby kicked against their joined hands, making them both laugh. Active today, Rosalie observed. Just like his sister. Or her brother, Adam countered, their ongoing friendly debate about the baby's gender a source of amusement for both. Sarah tugged at her father's pant leg. Story time, Daddy? You promised. So I did, Adam agreed. How about we sit under the oak tree, where it's cool? As Adam settled with Sarah beneath the shade of the oak, book in hand, Rosalie moved to the garden to clip fresh flowers for the dinner table. Their routine was comfortable yet never dull, each day bringing small joys and shared challenges. Later that evening, after Sarah was tucked in bed with stories of brave cowboys and clever rancher girls dancing in her dreams, Rosalie and Adam sat on the porch swing Adam had built the previous summer. The night was warm, crickets singing in the darkness, stars scattered across the velvet sky. I got a letter from my cousin in Colorado today, Adam said, his arm draped comfortably around Rosalie's shoulders. He says the valley I told you about is just as beautiful as ever. The wildflowers were exceptional this year. Rosalie leaned against him, remembering his description from years ago. You still want to show it to me someday? I do. He kissed the top of her head. Maybe next spring? Sarah would be old enough for the journey, and the new little one would be able to travel by then. The idea of seeing the places Adam had described, of expanding their world beyond the boundaries of Silver Creek, filled Rosalie with anticipation. I'd like that. Father always said a person should see something of the world before settling down. Adam chuckled. I think we've done things a bit backward then. We've done things our way, Rosalie corrected, taking his hand and placing it on her belly where the baby was moving again. And I wouldn't change a moment of it. They sat in companionable silence, watching fireflies dance among the flowers in the garden. The wooden ring Adam had carved still adorned Rosalie's finger alongside the gold wedding band, both worn smooth with years of work and love. Do you remember that first morning you found me planting flowers by your steps? Adam asked, his voice thoughtful. How could I forget? I nearly shot you, Rosalie replied with a laugh. I knew then, he said, his tone growing serious. Even with you standing there threatening me, hair wild from sleep, rifle in hand, I knew you were the one I'd been searching for all my life. Rosalie turned to look at him, still moved by the depth of his feeling after all these years. It took me a bit longer to figure it out. You were worth waiting for, Adam said simply. Worth every flower planted, every morning spent hoping you'd finally see me. I see you, Adam Armstrong, Rosalie whispered, leaning forward to kiss him softly. I've never stopped seeing you since the day I finally let myself start. As night deepened around them, they remained on the porch, planning their journey to Colorado, discussing the ranch's needs for the coming season, dreaming of what their children might become. The garden Adam had planted as an act of patient love continued to flourish around them, a living testament to the truth they had both discovered, that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the smallest beginnings, if only given time, care, and the courage to bloom.